Heath and Kenneth Lucas, you co-wrote Judas and the Black Messiah about the FBI's plot against Black Panthers chairman Fred Hampton. Your work was recently nominated for a Writers Guild Award alongside Shaka King and Will Burson. So did it mean a lot to be recognized by writers in the industry for this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's a huge honor, man. It's like being honored by your peers and being recognized by your peers is always something special. And I didn't even anticipate it. You know what I mean? Like you get into the process of making movies and it's hard to even anticipate awards, but the fact that they did recognize us was a huge honor. Yeah, it's huge. And we come from a stand-up background. And so to be a stand-up comedian nominated as a writer is also another privilege. I mean, you think about some of the greats like Richard Pryor and Mel Brooks and Amy Schumer, Judd Apatow. So it's just great to join that list.
Right. And to be, writers with comedy backgrounds and to be nominated for this very dramatic film, was this a very different creative experience to working in comedy?
It's funny you ask that because we worked with Will and Shaka, and they also come from a comedy background and from a TV background. So it's kind of similar to constructing a show with an episodic show on TV. You know what I mean? Like you have a multiple group of writers working together to sort of figure out the story, and it kind of felt like that a little bit. So even though it's a very dramatic film, it still felt like we were all like leaning on our comedy chops and our comedy background to help us figure this thing out.
And what first interested the two of you in wanting to tell Fred Hampton's story? I know it goes back years of trying to get this movie made.
Right. So, I mean, it really goes all the way back to college. We went to college at the college in New Jersey. We were in our sophomore year, 2004, and we we were taking an African American studies course, and we came across Fred's story, and it just sort of blew our minds. It was like, I couldn't believe that the state sort of facilitated the assassination of a very young guy who was essentially exercising his constitutional rights. Not even essentially, was exercising his constitutional rights. So it always struck me as just like a very dark chapter in American history. And I was always floored by the fact that not everyone was talking about it. It was just sort of brushed under the rug. So at that point, I was like, I really would love to see more people talk about the story. I think that was the genesis of getting the movie made. So once we got into entertainment, one of our primary goals was to see that to the end and see it get made in its proper form.
And working with Shaka and Will to get this movie made, I know it went through a lot of different iterations and forms and potential casting between when the idea first came about and when it eventually got made. Did the obstacles along the way ever feel kind of insurmountable at any point where you thought like this is just not going to happen, or did it always seem to be progressing?
I mean, before Shaka got involved, when it was just Kenny and I, and we were going around town and pitching it to production companies and to studios and getting rejections, yeah, we definitely felt like this might just be an uphill battle, and maybe it's just a movie that can never be made. But once Shaka got involved, and once Will got involved, once Charles King got involved, once Coogler got involved, it definitely felt more promising. It definitely felt like, okay, we have a shot here. And even then with, all those people attached to it, it was still an uphill battle. So I just think getting a movie made is tough, but getting a movie made about a Black revolutionary socialist, it's even tougher. So, but I don't think that anyone let those obstacles stop them. I think because of our passion for Fred Hampton, I think people really wanted to see it through. So once all those people got attached to it, and I knew they had the same love for Fred that we had, and that passion sort of carried us throughout the entire process.
Right.
And you mentioned that, of course, Fred Hampton was a Black revolutionary socialist. Does it feel like now? It feels like all those words together would have seemed, completely outside of the, of the general conversation, and now it feels almost like there are Black socialists getting elected.
Right.
Does it feel like there's more openness to this story and to who he was and to what he represents now, even than maybe a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean, when Hampton was on the scene, there were just it was the Red Scare. You know, it was this fear of communism, and you couldn't even you couldn't even mention you were that. And so Hollywood sort of took up that same sort of mantle where they reacted sort of negatively to the notion of socialism. But now with Bernie Sanders and AOC and the Democratic Party going a little bit to the left, I feel like socialistic types of programs are being more accepted. I mean, if you look at Social Security or anything like that, those are socialistic type programs. So I think there's just a more national acceptance of that sort of ideology, and it allow for us to make the film. I don't think you could make this film 10 years ago. I don't think it's possible.
But
it's also built on a lot of like Black films that have come out that
right.
that have spoken to the Black experience. I mean, you have movies like Moonlight, you had movies like Selma, you had all these great Black films that I think help, break down some of the barriers for us that allow for our film to get made.
And speaking of Black film, we're seeing so many like it would have seemed anomalous like even 10 years ago to see this many films about Black experiences from Black filmmakers and Black writers. And there are so many this year, from this to United States versus Billie Holiday, One Night in Miami, even Small Axe, which deals with some similar stuff in the UK. Does it feel like kind of like an inflection point where there's more of a media openness to recognize some of these stories and some of these complexities around our relationship with government and law enforcement?
I think that there is certainly a more acceptance on the part of the media, but I think also audiences are hungry for content that speaks to that experience, and not just Black audience. Like, it's not just a Black audience. I'm seeing people of all different stripes talking about Judas, talking about One Night in Miami, talking about Ma Rainey, all those films, and it's like it just feels like we're finally sort of being able to make art collectively in its most authentic fashion. Like before, you'll have a Malcolm X, you'll have a Do the Right Thing, and then you'll have 5 years go by, and then you'll have another big Black movie. But now it's like it's happening simultaneously, and it's very strange to me, really.
Yeah, this feels like a banner year. I mean, honestly, ever since 12 Years a Slave, which is 2014, I believe, or was it 2013?
22, it might have been 2012.
2012? Well, ever since 12 Years a Slave, I just feel like it's been like a sort of a watershed moment in Black cinema. You had 12 Years a Slave, and then you get Moonlight. Selma, Moonlight, Get Out, Black Panther. You get all these films that are just, again, they're all eclectic. They all speak to the Black experience from different angles. And I think it's just been an openness from audiences and from certain streaming sites that have allowed for Black content to thrive. And I think it's only getting better. I mean, more voices are being heard from not just men and women, but from the trans community. Like, you're getting so many more voices being heard and sharing their experience. And I think that's ultimately a good thing.
And I think it's true not just for Black cinema, but I think it's true for Asian cinema. I think it's true for Latinx cinema. I feel like it's just been an explosion of multiculturalism in cinema, and it's the best for the art. Like, the art is at its best when everyone has an equal opportunity to create unencumbered by systemic issues.
I mean, look at a film like Nomadland. A film like that wouldn't have gotten any praise 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, because it just doors weren't open. But now you have a film like Nomadland that's great, and that's from the perspective of a person of color. And I just think that's just, I don't know. I just feel like we're in a good time right now for cinema. And this story about Fred Hampton that you're telling, it's framed through largely through the point of view of William O'Neill, the man who betrays him. Was that always something that you wanted to approach this story in that way, or did that come along, as the process went along?
I think for us, we were always more intrigued by that approach because we felt like it did a couple of things. One, it inverts the biopic formula where you go from the perspective of the larger than life hero. You know the beats, and then he dies tragically, and then you do something at the end. We always felt like William O'Neill's perspective was different and fresh, and it adds to that sense of paranoia that we're trying to capture
at that moment. This is a story essentially about COINTELPRO, right? I mean, it's Fred Hampton, but it's more of a story about ideas. And I feel like by going through William O'Neill's perspective, you capture the essence of the paranoia and the surveillance state and the notion that this guy is grappling with two sides. I just felt like it was more captivating from a narrative perspective.
Also, that juxtaposition between Bill O'Neill and Fred, it's just so much stronger when you see it visually. You see someone like Fred Hampton, who was completely committed to his beliefs. He wasn't a coward. He was fearless. And then you have this other story of this guy who was the antithesis of Fred Hampton. And I think you just tell a more powerful story when you see them side by side.
Was it challenging to kind of put yourself and get into that mindset of William O'Neill and to kind of consider him as this fully fledged person, given that what he did was so basically despicable?
Egregious, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was tough. I mean, the story itself is so tragic that you can't help but just get saddened by just the whole ordeal. But even trying to get into the headspace of William O'Neill, like it definitely takes some years of your life. I mean, it's like, I'm pretty sure I started smoking a little bit more, started drinking a little bit more. It's just such a heavy story to carry. And I see it with Lakeith. He was struggling with it, and I think it's just a tough story in general. It's a very tough story to deal with. So it was definitely difficult. I don't know if I can't say this. I don't want to speak for Kenny, but
I mean, the thing is, I was already in a pretty negative headspace when we were outlining the story. Like I was already like the Hollywood pressures and drinking and stuff like that. So it's like I could sort of relate to this idea of being in a situation where you feel like forces beyond your control are dictating your life. Like I could understand that aspect of William O'Neill's life. What I didn't understand and what I can never understand is how he would allow for those same forces to kill someone who is seemingly really good. Like you can be manipulated by a system and it can be damaging to your life, but you don't have to allow that system to kill others. And I feel like William O'Neill sort of just let that happen. And at no point did he try to warn Fred or give him a heads up that they might kill him. So I never understood.
And the two of you have been very active and engaged with politics and American history of racism and inequality, and to now have this movie coming out at a time of, after this last year of COVID and protests, it sort of feels like it's shined a black light on American inequality. What's it like to have this movie coming out now, and what do you think it kind of reflects or contributes to the conversation about who we are?
I mean, it's very surreal. I mean, we started to develop the story around 2013, when after Trayvon got murdered, and it was a different time. Obama was president. It was a different energy around race issues. There were still some huge problems, and it was the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so, when we started to develop it, these issues were baked into the genesis of the story. But to see it come out now on the heels of the protests, I mean, I didn't anticipate it, and it's just crazy.
And also the Capitol riots.
Right.
And the end of Trump, to have this film come out at that time, it's unreal.
Yeah, because we reached out to Shaka in September. So Trump was running for office, but Trump wasn't president. So, in the development of the story, it's hard to say we anticipated Trump and it came out right on time. I can't even say we did that expertly, but it was it's crazy that it's coming out at this time, and I think that these issues are pretty timeless. Right. Unfortunately, in America, I think that they're pretty timeless. So it probably could have come out in 2028. It still would have been timeless. So it's unfortunate that that's the history of America, but it is what it is.
And the film is telling this history of Fred Hampton that hasn't been as widely known as a lot of other civil rights leaders. And it's a major awards contender. Daniel Kaluuya has been getting a lot of attention in addition to your nominations for the Writers Guild, potential Oscar nominations. What would it mean to kind of have this story get that kind of amplification of being in that kind of award space and getting those Oscar nominations?
I mean, it would for especially for Daniel to get nominated playing Fred Hampton, for me, it would feel like I contributed positively to Fred's legacy. We created this character, and the character based on his life, and we use his speeches, and it's like it'll be a validation that mainstream industry watched the film and said this guy deserves an Academy Award. I mean, obviously that goes for Lakeith and Dominique and Jesse and everyone in the cast who could potentially get nominated for an Academy Award. Yeah, I'm not saying it will validate the experience, because the experience is already amazing, and I feel like we've honored Fred's legacy, and that's the most important thing. But it would be another step in a direction of saying like, wow, we really did this for Fred.
Right. I mean, I just think about all of the talent that worked on this film, from Sean Bobbitt as our cinematographer, from Kristen Sprague as our editor. We just had so much talent from top to bottom, and for any of them to get recognized, I think would be just an honor, because I think they deserve it. I think that it was so much talent on this production team, and they really knocked it out of the park. And so I hope more for them, that they get nominated and get recognized for the work that they put into it in honor of Fred's legacy.
Well, I want to congratulate you both on your work on the film, on the recognition you and the film have received so far, and fingers crossed and knock on wood and all the other things for the weeks and months to come in this weird awards race. Thank you so much for talking to me about it today.
Of course. Thank you. You asked some great questions, man. It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.